gonna bring this down.
So hey, let's just kind of kick this around. And so I was wanting to talk with you or ask some questions about. So how should we think, or how do you think? Or that sounds like I'm not saying asking you for authoritative or prescriptive, but biblically, as every Christian should be informed and convicted. So what are your thoughts on how should we be thinking about canceling our services? Or not just us, in principle. Like I actually, I'm submitted to our elders. I appreciate that we have doctors, several in our congregation and on our session.
Mm-hmm.
So they're choosing to do this. And I think even if the government had probably, if our governor had not issued an executive order, I'm confident that our session, our leadership would have made some sort of modification regardless, just out of their own prudence and wisdom. But how, in a broader sense, apart from our given situation, how should churches feel about canceling for any reason?
Right. Yeah. How should they feel about canceling for any reason? It's one of the difficulty of this is that so much of the conversation is I don't know what word to use. Isolated is the wrong word, but what I'm trying to get at is there's so much that you and I don't know about how what ought to be done. All we know is what's being done and what others have to say about it. And so it's very difficult for me in my capacity as a minister of the gospel to move in and say, and I wouldn't say, and I'm not saying, this is all much ado about nothing. This is all, a bunch of hot air. This is, panic disproportionate to the threat, all that kind of thing. It's the difficulty is it's really, really difficult, if not impossible, for me to know those things. And the reason I'm tilting toward impossible is because I'm not convinced the experts know those things. Absolutely, right? So if those who are experts in the field are still sort of wagering guesses, and you and I have talked about modeling these things and how helpful models are, and so for those reasons, like there's lots of variables here. That's what's so frustrating about it is just there are so many variables, and so. But that's not quite the question you asked. You asked about anything.
I mean, like we're right now we're canceling for, our services have been physically canceled in the sense that we are doing online. So let's take this into the realm of principle and not just where we're currently is, would we feel the same way about canceling for a Super Bowl? Obviously not. Would we cancel services for issues of pleasure? Like, oh, well, this is just more convenient. And so I'm just, is there a principle about when and how a local congregation in the body of Christ should consider and how we ought to go about canceling? Is there a guiding principle there that should inform our? Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
That was somewhat of a leading question.
Yeah, that's an easier question for me to answer, I think.
Yeah.
My answer to that is what is the wisdom of the elders, and the decision to move on this has to come from the elders and not the government. So it was very, very important to me taking steps here at the beginning. It will continue to be very important to me that the elders are the one who decide. Like I think I sent you some material on this that you might have seen as I'm thinking through these things. No?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have a backlog of emails at the moment.
Okay.
So.
I'm working on a draft of a document right now that I'm going to bring to the session. That is basically it's a plan for our, I don't know what to call it, reunification, restoration, etc. And what I say in that document is it is important to me that it was the elders who instituted the suspension of gathered meeting, it is very important to me that it is the elders who then lift that suspension.
Yeah.
And so the authority that the authority that God has given to the government and given to the magistrate is it's the authority to punish evildoers, certainly, and of course for yes, public health and safety and things like that. The authority,
Romans 13.
right? The authority that the Lord has given to His church, right? Moral and spiritual in nature, pertaining to the ministry of the gospel, the administration of the sacraments, so on. And then so since that's our arena, since that's our field to play on, I want to make sure that the elders are the ones who are making these decisions.
Yeah.
That they're not being made for us.
I wholeheartedly echo that. And I appreciate that, because I think it would be easy and almost, it would be much easier for the elders to, if we took the approach of, well, the government said to do this and we're just going to do that. I think because Christians have this, I think we don't want to upset things. We don't want to make waves oftentimes.
Yeah.
And so I think we can easily say, or maybe too easily say sometimes, well, this isn't the hill to die on. Oh, this isn't the fight to have. And I'm not saying we're calling people to action, but I'm saying thinking about this and actually saying, well, no, the elders make this call. You don't make this call. Fill in the blank. And so I appreciate that, and I look forward to those documents and those conversations taking place because I trust our session. And
so I don't mind telling you, even on this video, because our session meetings are public. It's not like we're everything's done in secret. But the plan that I'm taking to the session is that we are gonna what I'm hoping to do is to put together a commission made up of ruling elders and or doctors. I mean, both of those together, and if it happens to be the same person who's both a ruling elder and an MD, well then so much the better. But of ruling elders and of doctors in our congregation, and they will advise the session as we make these different decisions. And so I'm wanting to establish this commission, and then when the commission says, it's time, then the session will take that under advisement and make the decision.
And even if there's intermediate steps, like
Sure.
something, there could be something in between, like for no meeting whatsoever to, hey, all clear. I think that prudence would dictate something in between, earlier rather than later. I don't know. I'm not the experts.
Right.
But even that, though, even saying, I'm trust the experts, and not even talking about our session in general, but or MDs on the session, or ruling elders. So like the idea of trusting experts and just relying, what are the benefits we have? We have experts or people that are educated on our session, but at the same time, how do we not fall victim to mentally and in the culture of just like, we'll just trust the experts and don't make waves.
Right. This
is maybe a little bit of a rant, but I welcome it.
Yeah. So it depends on, my take on this is a bit different because it depends on where do you see the higher risk. So is the higher risk that you're going to be too compliant, spineless even in dealing with this, or is the risk that you are going to encourage a sort of spirit of anarchy and cynicism? And so those would be the two extremes for me. And I don't right now, I'm not convinced that it's obvious which one's the bigger threat to us. And so, I
think yes is the answer on your so which is the bigger threat? Yes. Balance is always the challenge for I think people in general, but maybe especially Christians, because we don't want to be how do I say this? We don't want to be a negative on the gospel. We don't want to be a negative view of those crazy Christians. I mean, we'll bear that mark rightly so sometimes. And I'm okay with that. We don't want to give fodder for false claims or
Right.
for imprecision.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the greater concern of what you're talking about. Either anarchy or complicity
Right.
is what I just say? Not balance. So I just said the word that we don't want to. Anyway, I just lost the word. But we don't want to give too much imprecision. That's what I was trying to say. We need to be precise. Otherwise, we're going to be perceived one way or the other.
Right.
So, like, I'm very easily. I know that I will likely sound more like I'm on the anarchic stage.
Yeah.
But it's not that I'm called. My thing is, I want us to at least be thinking about these things. I'm not calling even to action.
Yep.
But I do think it's like, well, no, you don't just do what the government says.
No.
I'm not saying to do something different. I'm saying, but you don't just do what they say.
Right.
Let's actually, like I said, I would be more concerned with a board of elders just saying, oh, well, that's what the government said to do.
Right. Right. And we did not do that. The only thing we did with respect to that, I think I told you, is that it was extended to me to make decisions that the government had already made independent of the session.
Yeah. They're
So
saying you can follow the law.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And so that's really not any sort of extension of special authority or special power. But just to say that if the government has said it's okay or not okay, I don't need their permission before echoing that.
And that probably has a lot to do with logistics of not having to call a meeting. Also,
exactly.
Not,
that's all
like
that is,
you have freedom to release staff from their duties.
Yeah.
There are practical logistical concerns because yes, we are a spiritual entity, we are religious, but there's also just practical things of running an office and so things like that. That's wisdom there. So
let me pause this just for a second and ask: do you want to go live, or do you want to just keep going?
I've only probably got about 15 to 30
more
minutes.
All right.
But no, but we can do it. Go live if you want.
Nah, not for 15 minutes.
Okay. But then let's chop it up and put it out there.
Okay.
And say, hey, look, we're going to set a time. But let's continue in that vein. So we've talked about some of the more principle guiding, but how should we, or the guiding principles. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how Christians should interact with both local, regional, or national, as we all have the ability to see stories, with some churches canceling or not. Well, let's take one at a time. So there are churches that have canceled, and I've heard people, these voices are fewer, I think, because not just because of the principal aspect, but because of the logistical aspect. But, I've seen people make comments like, oh, well, they're canceling. They must not have either they don't have strong convictions, or they don't have faith that God will protect them. Right. What are your thoughts on those I'll call them straw man arguments, but what are your thoughts about that?
Okay. So let me repeat the question, make sure I've got it right. You're essentially asking, like, what are my thoughts on the accusation that if you're ceasing to meet, it's because you don't have enough faith? Is that?
Well, is it that you don't actually believe we ought to be doing this, and you're just kowtowing to the government? Okay. Or do you think that it's a matter of I can think of a lot of different, but just Christians criticizing other Christian bodies for forsaking. Let's church it up, for forsaking the assembling of the brethren.
Right. Yeah.
Let's be the weaker brother, or or accuse them of being.
So there's a difference between I might regret this wording later, but there's good. It's doing what's risky and doing what's courageous are not necessarily the same thing. And I think particularly Christians in the U.S. struggle with this distinction, or evangelicals in the U.S. anyway, struggle with this distinction that doing that which is risky and gets noticed is not the same as being courageous, and that not doing what's risky and will get noticed is not the same as cowardice. And so, so I'd immediately want to start with that distinction. Now it is true that those two can go together in plenty of scenarios. But so if I, if for instance, this pastor in Virginia, Lord have mercy on him, who kind of, he held services and kind of said, I dare you to come and get me. And he's now died from the coronavirus. And so
I've not even heard of that story. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad you haven't heard of it, because as soon as I heard of it, I thought, oh, this is exactly the red meat that some types of people are going to need to lambaste Christians who are, trying to meet or whatever. And so like my short answer is no. I don't think it's an absence of courage to cease meeting or things like that. And again, it's because there are so many variables and so much that's unknown. That's number one. Yeah. Number two, I'm still on the side of saying, if there is some dark power at work that is trying to extinguish the ministry of the word, it's doing the crummiest job ever.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yes, we've been temporarily displaced from our fellowship, and that's not good. But at the same time, you've got ministry of the word that's happening on so many different platforms in ways that we've never tried before. I mean, at least this intently and intensely.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
If nothing else, this might come as this might serve as a leverage point for many churches that may have been putting off going viral,
Right.
getting on the web and stuff, like making that content available. Yeah. This has really forced them to become equipped to that.
Exactly.
And there are lots of second and third order effects I hope we talk about in time.
Sure. And it's, for me, that's a tough thing to lament, because I've kind of always wanted to do this.
Yeah.
And when somebody, when that want to became a have to, part of me was kind of excited by that potential.
And the hope is that we're able to continue to deliver it both live and online.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To just, hey, put more, just spread it more, broadcast it more, but briefly, obviously every situation will be different. But even with the case of this Virginia guy, and there are other churches that are continuing to meet in, now, I think I've seen both good and bad choices on that front. I've seen some churches not taking, they're being, presumptuous on God's grace and mercy.
Yes.
While other ones are being prudent, and they said, okay, we're not hugging, we're not, we are going to separate ourselves as much as we can in the sanctuary. The elders have made this choice. We have instructed, hey, if you are elder or sick, please join us online.
Yep.
And let us know how much we can serve, how else we can serve you. So they're truly loving the whole body as well as they can. But then you have ones that are just being presumptuous. And so I don't know this Virginia pastor's case, but I'll be honest with you. Let's say if I was a elder at a church, or even just a member, that our session had said, hey, look, we are going to still meet. We recognize there are some risks. We are mitigating them. But I like to think that had I contracted it then, first of all, we don't know if he even contracted it at church, whatever. Heck, there are a heck of a lot more people that are less homogenous when I go to the Lowe's or to the grocery store than there are that would be at Grace Pres. Yeah. So, I mean, again, are we being presumptuous about God's grace, or can we be prudent and still take, live our lives? So I think that has a lot to do with every situation is going to be so different. Yeah. Now, let's say, we're in the camp of, we have foregone our congregational meeting right now. So on the other side of that discussion, should we be judgmental, or how just play the other side?
I think we should be very judgmental.
I agree.
That's my approach to everything. I think we should be exercising judgmental behavior at all times.
How do we
especially on
avoid?
Baptists.
I agree. Yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna sidestep that one because there are lots of jokes about that.
Yeah.
But no, like, so what happens when there are those who are still meeting in our region, in our nation, in our town? How do we engage that conversation? Because, like, my thing is, I want to defend based on principle.
Right.
Like, okay, as a former oneness person, I know the church in Baton Rouge is a oneness place, and
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I could tell by the pictures. I was like, and then I go to the website and I'm like, yep,
show enough.
Yeah, they're oneness. They're non-Trinitarian.
Yeah.
And so I made a comment on. I kind of flamethrowed a comment on someone's post about that, and saying, like, well, their doctrine is far more dangerous than coronavirus. And surprisingly, no takers. So anyway, someone may have not even known to what I was referring.
Yeah.
However, I don't. If their local leadership made this choice, now my understanding is they've not taken a lot of mitigating practices. I don't know that. I've not seen it. However, this guy in Florida, Rodney Howard-Browne, televangelist, from what I've heard, they took tremendous efforts locally
at tremendous cost, I might add.
Like over $100,000 they sunk into some things. And I'm like, I fundamentally disagree with this guy on many doctrinal issues. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? They did the right thing. And
well, this is going to be boring because we're agreeing on everything. But
But here's the thing is, people need to know that they can have these ideas. And I actually don't want Christians to just think, oh, well, he's not in my camp, I can't defend the principle. Right. I think, and look, let's just be honest. Sometimes we in the Reformed tradition, even if we won't criticize someone else, we'll just be silent in our approval of their actions because we're like, well, I can't really cheerlead someone who isn't Reformed or who maybe even has a look. Again, if the church in Baton Rouge, the Oneness Pentecostal church, that I don't see as, while there might be Christians, believers there, the doctrines they hold to are not Christian. They're not. Let me say, they are not biblically orthodox. Yeah, they will put you out of the kingdom if you live consistently and fight against biblical truth. Yeah. That said, if they have handled. If they've handled this thing with mitigating factors and their local leadership took these feelings and that they're seeking to be peaceable with all men and still follow their convictions, I want to cheer. It's hard because while I want to stand up for the principle, it's hard for me to cheerlead those that are preaching a false gospel. Right. So how do we bear, how can I think about that dichotomy? And like, I don't want them to preach the gospel when there's no, I don't want them to preach a false gospel when there's no coronavirus. However, I also don't want the state to shut them down. Right. I want Christians preaching the true gospel to shut them down with better ideas, with better exegesis.
But we're still talking about the same thing that we talked about earlier, which is who declares the suspension. Yeah. Is it the elders of a church? Is it the leaders of a church? Or is it the government? And so the objection is still the same, even if it's, even if it's some odd off the wall church of the fire of the holy mountain on Zion in the day of Elijah or whatever, whatever the place is. We're still you and I are still talking about the same principle, which is who closes the doors and locks them, or who comes in to say, no, this meeting ought not happen. Yeah. So I was how can I put this? I think my spirit of compliance was far more intact before they started arresting and finding and giving people citations. Yeah. There's this, I don't know exactly the context of it, but I think in the first Avengers movie, Captain America and Iron Man are kind of at odds with each other.
That's Civil War, I think.
No. Right? Yeah, it's before Civil War. Oh, okay. Because they're on board the Nick Fury's plane.
Quinjet, yeah.
No, the aircraft carrier thing, the floating aircraft carrier thing. and they're starting to, their arguments kind of starting to heat up. And Captain America says something like, "You need to stop right now." And Iron Man says, "Oh, I'm starting to want you to make me."
Ooh, that's
And
good.
at the start of this, I was like, okay, I see the threat, I understand it, recognize it, let's comply. And when they started, that's when I started saying, "Oh, I'm starting to want you to make me."
Yeah.
Because
Ooh, I just recently watched Men of Honor, with Cuba Gooding Jr. about Carl Bashir's the first Black Navy diver.
oh yeah, okay,
And it was back in the 90s, I believe, or maybe early 2000s. But on this, his later to be wife asked him, "Well, why do you want this so bad?" And he says, "Because they said I couldn't have it." Now, here's the thing: there is a sinful anarchic,
yes,
like we were talking about. There is a sinful
violation of the fifth commandment, essentially.
Yeah. And I am my own God. I will not be submitted.
Yep. Oh, so
However,
first commandment as well. Well done.
Exactly. However, I think there is a righteous view of that. Like I think like given our situation, the elders have made that decision.
Right.
Hypothetical. There's a time.
Yeah, and let me pause you just there for anybody watching this. If it, we send this out later. The elders of grace have declared that we are not meeting. Just want to make that clear again.
Yeah.
You kind of wave your hands around. We are not meeting right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So just we're gonna have a drinking game about that eventually.
Right. Don't drive home.
Exactly.
Wait,
right?
you're already home.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good point. So hypothetically, should the quarantine be restricted? Continue when a time where our elders rule, hey, look, this is not, so is there a righteous way? And I think, let me not give a dumb way of asking that question, but I think there is a righteous way of bearing that I hate to say spirit, but that attitude of saying, look, no, you cannot restrict this. This is not your realm. And it's funny, I was reading, Romans 13 the other day. Just with this going on, I wanted to check my heart with that. And then I read it, and while I won't, this is a longer discussion about how much is prescriptive, descriptive, but then verse 7, it talks about rendering unto honor those to whom honor is due, revenue to whom revenue is due, tax. So it's a prescription for who gets what,
right,
and what level of allegiance, and so it's not a simple blind, oh well, I just must listen to X all the time. It's no, who gets what. Do they get my taxes? Well, according to Romans, yes, they get my taxes. Do they get my honor? They might get my respect sometimes. They might get my honor to a degree, but are they the ultimate? And so it's context. And so I think that was I don't know, like you sharing that line, and then me watching Men of Honor the other day. It's like, because they said we couldn't have it, It's like when we abuse that text, right? It really shows we're ignoring Paul's life. Because this is the same guy that kept preaching the gospel and got murdered for it. Yeah. So apparently he wasn't just saying, guys, listen to what the Romans say.
Right.
That's incongruent with his life. And so I just, but he also wasn't trying to overthrow the Roman government simultaneously.
Yeah, and I think what holds the line for me here, and why I don't want to say I'm not concerned about this, but I may be less concerned than some, is because given it is not as though we have 7 epidemiologists, in the country, and this cadre of 7 is going to make these decisions, right? So the expertise, while you've got people in positions of authority, the expertise is spread far and wide. And the simple fact is, I sincerely doubt that this will be able to go on for very much longer if it does not have some legitimacy. Okay. So initially, you send out the warning, and pretty much everybody gets on board except for those who want attention. Okay.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Or have an agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. They have an agenda. They want attention. Yeah. But pretty much everybody gets on board. If the emperor has no clothes, it's not going to take very long. And really, it just existentially feels like it's been a long time. It has not been that long. We're talking 4 or 5 weeks,
But it's been so different.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
that's why.
Yeah, and we don't yet know the consequences of the next few months and years. That's a whole other conversation. But I guess my point is, the reason why I'm kind of chill on this is to say, look, if the emperor has no clothes, this line cannot be held much longer before you're going to get enormous divisions in the scientific and medical community. That are going to be just so painfully noticeable. At least, so maybe I have too much faith in that, but
no, I don't think so. I think that's helpful for me to be reminded of just how America is not what you see on CNN or Fox News.
Thank God.
Thank the Lord. Yeah. What I'm saying is, we are not moving. We don't live our lives according to a 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
Historically, and even not now. We might for a while, but eventually, let's say, even if there was a radical continued clampdown, until people start losing, and let's say it was uncalled for, it was unjustified, until you start seeing neighbors, friends, and families, or their friends and families all start contracting this and going, without even without a divine imperative, there would be dissent from that. Right. And so we are not the 24-hour news cycles, but that does.
No, you remember what I said at the start? I said it. The reason why, if you're going to get a blog, make sure you have something to say. And make sure that it's worth saying. And I wish somebody would give that advice to 24-hour news networks. Make sure you have something to say, and make sure that it's worth saying.
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
Maybe somebody watching this video right now wishes we would have taken that advice as well. But be that as it may, we'll keep talking a little bit longer.
Yeah, for sure. So oh man, I had
Sorry.
No, you're good. It was a question. I didn't want to sidetrack that, because I think that's very helpful, what you're talking about. Yeah. And reminding us that even if the worst is happening, or let's say it's all, I'm not a hoaxer at all. Let's put that out. But let's say there was a hoax element to this. There was some panic element. Yeah. And for sure, people are depraved. People are capitalizing. People in power will always capitalize. Statists are going to state, But anyway, tyrant's going to tyrant. I don't know, whatever you want to say it. However, we, and thankfully our founders, but also I think just God's providence as well, we are not as... I'm trying to think. Life doesn't come at you as fast as it feels sometimes.
Right. Yes.
It feels. Yes. What's the biggest problem you've ever had? The one you're going through right now. And so that is hard to remember in panic. That is hard to remember even when you're not panicking, but you watch everyone around you. Like, because look, at the beginning of this, I was like, man, whatever, it's going to blow over. I think where I started really my great frustration was when it was extended. And here's the thing, and this is where I don't know that we want to take this route, but I think the biggest cause for concern with any sort of government overreach was, and expertise comes into play, is not knowing the metrics by which this has been chosen. Like, not telling, if you can communicate clearly to people, we want to return to normal when X, Y, and Z start happening. Right now, it's just trust. It's essentially, they're asking us, I think it could be perceived that they're asking, when you just say, oh, just trust the expert, it's trust your idol.
Right.
And when your idol fails, and it must, look, the government was not built, nor is it capable of becoming
Right.
our God. And when
Yep.
idols don't deliver, you either must find another one, and
Yep.
that's concerning. And
Yeah.
I don't say that happily, but when your idol can't deliver, you have to tear it down.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we must. I don't think we want that.
No.
Chaos is not. Anarchy is not desirable as
No.
much as you. But our frustration with our idol not delivering,
Right.
when you have things out of place, when you don't have when your hope is in the government and they don't tell you, here's what we are shooting for, here's something external to us that we are shooting for, I think that really sets us up, or let me say this, it has set me up for turmoil.
What's that bit of that SMART goals, specific
for sure.
and manageable and attainable and whatever that is.
And even if you say in the middle of a crisis, you can't say for sure what the goals are. I think it's helpful even if you communicate, hey, we're monitoring the situation. Right. These are the things we are going to start looking for to develop a plan.
Right.
But when it's just, I hate to say this, hopefully it didn't offend folks, but I've heard people use this term, and I think it's helpful. But when we devolve into panic porn, I think that is destructive to our psyche and to our souls even after a while.
Well, and for me, panic is the worst part of it, because you can prepare for anything, but if you can't trust your neighbor, none of it matters. Yeah.
Well, and talking about like other churches, like in other areas, like that in Kentucky and Mississippi over the weekend, they held services. Some of them were just drive-in services, and you had the local police departments in Mississippi, I think it was Greenville, Mississippi, taking license plates so that they could find people.
Oh, see, that's I'm starting to want you to make me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is that is absolutely government overreach. And this is from a, America Republican state where we think, well, that'll never happen here.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to cause alarm, but it is, that's an appropriate level of civil disobedience, in my opinion, because they were taking precautions. Everyone was in their car. Everyone was doing, and so it's,
and
to me,
I
that's
feel
the
like
same thing.
If we had a parking lot big enough to sustain that I'd do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. But my thing is when you are trying to, it's the same thing as when under a previous administration, when you rope off open air monuments, it's like, no, but during a government shutdown, you rope off these open air monuments. It's like, no, I will make this more inconvenient for you than it needs to be. That is tyranny. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. That is like saying it's not enough that we're going to, let's say if the Roman Empire had said, oh, you can be Christians, but we're just not going to let you do it in public. Okay. And they said, fine, we'll comply with that. We will meet in homes. Absolutely. You can't own property in our society. We'll meet in homes. And they said, oh, well, we're going to make it so that you can't walk to their home. That's when it's like, hold on, what now?
Yeah.
And so this is where us, for the sake of wanting to be peaceable with all men, and Romans 13, taken out of context, I think we must reject the extreme of cowardice, but we also I think we have to constantly weigh our hearts with, am I moving into rebellion?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we do have to be mindful of that.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Anyway.
And that's been part of my concern pastorally right now is that there's, how can I put this? There's two kinds there are two ways during this time to reveal that your heart is not resting in the promises of Jesus. Yeah. Two ways. So one of them is to telegraph a lot of fear, and saying, I have to go hide and I'm terrified of everything and, can't.
And if you're not doing that, then you're not loving your neighbor.
Oh, that's so maybe three ways, because that's the Phariseeism, and the new fundamentalism. It is amazing. It is amazing the sort of the language that I'm seeing regarding this that I have not seen since my Liberty days, which Liberty University is like fundamentalists are there. Not everybody at Liberty is a fundamentalist. But I haven't heard language like that since I knew them fundamentalists at Liberty. It's fascinating. So there's kind of if you do or don't do X, then you're not loving your neighbor, then you're not,
Yep.
then you're a terrorist. Then that's, man, that's a legalism that I knew we were capable of. I just didn't expect it to get so explicit so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. So there's the fear, there's the Phariseeism, but then there's also a kind of
Flippancy.
What?
Flippancy, if you want to keep the F theme going.
Yes. Oh, man. Yeah, look at this guy. Oh, yeah, so fear, Phariseeism, the flippancy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the flippancy to me can be just as dangerous, because what that's doing is rather than being, at least outwardly, rather than being the victim of fear, you're being the preacher of fear, right? And so nothing is trustworthy. Everything is everything has a conspiracy behind it.
Yeah.
And so you're still encouraging people to be terrified, but it's not terror of a virus. It's terror of being one of the uninformed sheep.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful way to scare people.
Oh, for sure.
And so I think that can be just as poisonous.
Yeah. There's a joke from a guy, I can't remember who said it originally, but he was talking about in the context of, from people who were leftists or secularists or whatever, when they become more conservative, they took the red pill, and it's an analogy to the Matrix. He's like, but you take one red pill, you don't take the whole bottle.
Right.
And so like in this, do we want to be able to discern apart from, what expert A says that might be imbalanced or something like that? Well, sure. But that doesn't mean we cast out all the things everything else that's true and that's good and that is prudent. It's not like, oh, you mean I shouldn't cower in fear in my home? Well, no, that would be dumb. Oh, so this is a hoax. Whoa, what now?
Right.
So it's like,
right.
No, and there's a large middle ground there.
Dude, but we're Americans and we love our extremes. That's
Absolutely.
How we think. That's how we operate. Yeah. That's how we move.
But see, I think it's actually truly extreme when you can hold both truths with prudence.
Yeah.
Where you can say, yes, this is a very contagious virus. And
right.
It is important that we don't forsake the assembling.
Yes.
So how do we hold these truths?
Yes.
How do we live like we should love our neighbor, the neighbor that needs protection, and the neighbor that needs community,
right,
and that needs a job,
right?
And so I just think that's
I think it's right on, and I'm not gonna this part's not gonna air, but I was gonna tell you, I wanted to share with you a couple of things from this document. I thought I sent to you, but maybe I didn't. So it's a document that I'm going to bring to the session on Thursday, Lord willing, about how do we go about restoring gathered worship. Mm-hmm. So do you mind if I read a couple of bits to you?
Please,
real quick?
Please.
Okay. So I'm very proud of the title of the document, which is When the Lord Brought Back the Captive Ones of Zion. Mm-hmm. Plan for restoration of gathered worship for Grace Presbyterian Church. So this is how I started off. It's no secret that COVID-19 has sparked discussions about public health, obedience to the civil magistrate, liberty and safety, and ecclesiastical authority. We believe that, and this is a quotation from our Book of Government, we believe that, quote, the authority given to the church by Christ is moral and spiritual only, thus distinguishing the government of the church from civil government. This authority is exercised in church courts and includes the work of serving, proclaiming, and ministering in the name of Christ as under-shepherds of his church. I am very pleased that when the session of this church was determining how we would respond, we did not simply move and act by the recommendation of civil magistrates. It was the elders of the church, some of whom are also medical doctors, who called for a temporary suspension of gathered worship. And so it must also be the elders of the church who lift that suspension at the time they deem appropriate. While we gladly submit to our civil authorities in accordance with Scripture, we also want to carefully guard the authority that Christ has given to the elders of his church and to no one else. Mm-hmm. And so what I am recommending is a 3-phase process, Eddie. So phase 1, the commission that I talked to you about. The commission will recommend that we activate phase 1 and formally lift the suspension of gathered worship. The commission will also submit resolutions on the following: when and how to resume administration of the Lord's Supper, numerical limitations of gatherings and how to facilitate social distancing, because I think that's how it's going to happen. They're going to say, okay, you can do 50 now. Okay, you can do 100 now. Okay, 150, I think that's how they're going to do it. Next, receiving physical contributions and gifts, whether and how to resume Wednesday night activities. After voting on the recommendations of the commission, the session will implement plans for 3 Sunday services. Example, 8:30, 10:30, 12:30. Attendance at these services will be determined by membership in under-shepherd groups. There will also be a number of empty seats left for visitors at every service time. Ruling elders will contact households in their under-shepherd groups to make sure they understand the plan and which service they should be present for. All services will be live streamed, or at least one of them, technology permitting. Then phase 2. So we have, I'm calling phase 1, 3 services, high restrictions. Phase 2, 2 services, moderate restrictions. 2-service model will include either self-determined attendance, that is pick your own service, or an expectation of registration, giving us a heads up to which one you're coming to. Karen Murphy would handle registration. A number of empty seats for visitors will always be included. The commission will revisit and revise all previous resolutions, directives, protocols, etc., and will make recommendations concerning reinstituting Sunday school and fellowship times before or after the service. Then phase 3. The commission will make recommendations to the session to dissolve, temporarily maintain, or permanently institute directives and protocols developed during this time. If not already so, Sunday school Wednesday night will be resumed. The session will dissolve the commission with thanks, and the first unified Sunday service will be celebrated with the Lord's Supper, a pot providence lunch, and a hymn sing Sunday night. And so
that's so funny. I was going to say, when this is over, we need to do a hymn sing to make up for the months of so cool.
Absolutely. The first Sunday is going to be a packed Sunday.
Would you consider a not a rubric? What's the word I'm looking for? Something that maybe would you consider would there be I'm trying to think what's the word I'm looking for? Essentially, would age ever be or not age, but like risk? Like, would you ever say, hey, look, we're going to, like, or do you just want to not even have that, what's the word I'm looking for? Not theme, but that, not rubric, but as that a considerable factor? Like
consideration and everything.
Like saying, hey, look, we are going to gather together, but we're advising if you are still in a, if aged or a health compromise, immunocompromised, we are asking or inviting you to view online,
right?
Until
that is how I would exercise that consideration, and that is why I specifically mentioned that the live streaming would continue.
Gotcha.
Because what I'm not saying is the bit I said about, like, for instance, under shepherd groups would determine. I'm not saying if you're in that under shepherd group who's registered for the 10:30, I expect you to be there. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but that's when you're streaming, because some of you still need to stay home.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I was just curious about that. So I like it. I think that's really, it's almost too thorough, but that's Presbyterian. So that's how we do it.
Right. Well, and I fully expect, I could be wrong, but I fully expect the session to take what I proposed and smooth it so that the gates are wider rather than more narrow. Yeah. I like what I put together, but I expect them to nitpick it and say, well, this is too much. This is too much. This is too much.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It's better to have more precision that you can then relax rather than not having a plan and coming together and saying, so guys, what do you guys think?
Exactly.
Exactly. So it's better that you say, hey,
I have learned the hard way that does not work.
No, it's better that you give them something they can pull strands out of than that you ask them to build whole cloth, if that makes sense.
Right. Exactly.
So let's bring this to a close.
Yeah.
And so sounds like we agree on a lot of stuff. It's been a fun conversation. It's been interesting and edifying. And I hope that if anyone else sees it, that they will also find it edifying. So where, apart from the Jesus, or the Bible or God or love, how I appreciate the exile theme.
Hmm.
What's a way we can savor this exile?
Oh, what a question.
And while you think about your answer, I'll give you
Yeah.
some. Because I seriously want you to answer that. But I understand it could need a few moments of time. So I think one thing I have been.
You mean after the fact or in the present moment?
In the present.
Got it.
And even retrospectively, how can we look back? So in those realms, but something I have been maybe convicted for not or inspired to do moving forward was, spend time, savor the family time.
Yeah.
Do better at that instead of just filling up all my moments that I'm stuck at home, so to speak, with tasks and jobs, but really just taking time, loving family, but also some things that I hope the Lord could use moving forward from this is I'm really hopeful in the idea that maybe more people are going to spend more time homeschooling and considering that because they realize, hey, this is not also I'm hopeful that perhaps people and companies will say, hey, we could telework and really change up the American lifestyle for the better, I think. So I'm hopeful that we could position some social and societal changes for the better. And God used something really odd to do those things potentially.
So I've got a mentor.
So savoring exile. That's what I would say. This is.
I've got a mentor and a kind of a coach, which I recommend to ministers and pretty much anybody who works. That you
I've got the Holy Spirit, so. Sorry.
All right. Eddie thinks the Holy Spirit is his life coach. Cool. No, but it's Jason Wood in Covington at Faith Presbyterian Church, Covington, Louisiana, and he's been no small help in helping me to navigate some of these things. But a question that he likes to pose quite a lot is, is this the best use of my time? Not that it's not good or even fun, but is it the best use of my time? And that's a question I don't ask enough. And I am going somewhere with this because he and I had a lot of conversation about household liturgy. He's where I got the idea from. And so for our church right now, and part of your answer to the question, how is this time going to bless us or what blessings are coming out of it? I'm hoping that family worship becomes something, a concept we're more familiar with, which is the whole reason that I'm doing the household liturgy. Now, when Jason and I were talking about it, he was not convinced that the household liturgy was a good idea because it's a really good reason. He says that it sounds to me like something that's going to be of help to those who really don't need your help right now. Those who are pretty, the people who are going to print that out and sit down and read it are probably pretty spiritually stable. It's the ones that really are not going to touch any of that are really going to need pastoral help right now, and maybe your time should go towards them. But the reason I did it anyway, even as I think he's onto something, the reason I did it anyway is because I said it at worst, what this will mean is that the idea of households doing something like this together is in our consciousness as a people. Like, oh, that's something that we do. That's something that families do. Apparently, we're not even there yet. Okay.
Yeah.
At least I think a lot of our folks aren't. Maybe more than I know, but that's just not really part of our culture, part of our practice, and so that this is me trying to push that forward. Even if only a handful of people use it, that's not really the target I'm aiming at. Like, oh man, the household liturgy only got like 10 downloads this week. Oh, no, I don't even know how many people are using it, to be honest, because that's not my target is I want this to be part of who we are. So
you're changing the culture. And I here's the thing, like we've not done it yet. I'm not going to lie.
Oh,
we haven't done that. But here's the thing, I'm going to push back on what he's saying a little bit. You're right. There are some people who the people that aren't doing that family worship that need to. But here's the deal. Like I became Covenant Baptist not because I had the systematic theology of it fully sewn up. I saw
Mhm.
it consistent with covenant theology.
Yeah.
But here's the bigger thing is I saw the people that were practicing that and articulating that and expounding that,
Mm.
and the people that I was gaining understanding from. And I'm like, I want my family's culture to change. And while I could not debate some people that I respect that hold opposing views, I couldn't win that debate.
Right.
But I wanted to change the culture.
Right.
Now here's the thing: is I coming through that debate with myself, that process, and me being prolonged in getting to do that.
Yeah.
Produced a better fruit in that baptism isn't enough. It's not enough to just. I don't want the formalism.
Mhm.
However, do I catechize my kids at home? Are we talking about theology? We do those things, not as much as I'd like.
Yeah.
So my thing is putting those resources out there for those who aren't doing it yet is still giving them something, not just to, oh, well, we need to do this in case someone asks,
Right.
but it's for people that are in the situation that I found myself in, where it's like, I want to do that. I have a hunger I want my kids to have that memory of, and to have that formation. It's not just the cherished, the little precious moments. Oh, they remember those good times. No, I want that when someone asks a question of them, or someone puts some bogus heresy in front of them, they know the positive plea, not just like, they don't just coil and, oh, well, that doesn't sound like that's in the Bible. They're like, well, no, that's not right, because God is, the doctrine of the Trinity teaches us that this, and they can give out 3 clear portions of, and so that would be fundamentally denying the eternality of the Son, or of the Logos, whatever, so they can, it's building something in them. And so even if you're like, well, we're not doing it perfectly yet, or we're not doing it yet, it puts that out there where it changes culture.
Right.
And so I think I appreciate your feedback on that. You didn't even think about, your answer wasn't, it gives us the time to change the culture. But I think that's a healthy way of looking at whether it's, homeschooling or family worship.
Right.
It's just like, this is giving us the opportunity to change our culture. And if we change the family culture, we change the nation's culture by default.
It's that thing about, like, that's where you can actually affect change. Right?
Well, there's a reason our children are called arrows.
Yeah.
We get to aim them at our culture. We get to, not to destroy, but to impact. And so I think it's a beautiful metaphor. The fact that, children are our arrows. That's how we get to shoot them into the world. Like we get to, it's not, and they're, if you want to say they're weapons, but they are instruments of the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not ours. Yeah. We don't get to hold on to them forever. But, so anyway, I thought that would be a helpful thing of just asking myself and your thoughts of, how can we savor and redeem the time of quarantine?
Right.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, I've appreciated this time together. Hopefully it becomes a regular thing during this time, and we'll see how far it goes elsewhere. And yeah, man, it was really great. And we'll try to set this up again for next week.
I would love it.
Awesome,
Let's do
brother.
it. All right.
Good.
We'll see you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah, man. Bye.